the most notorious inmates, secrets of Pelican Bay revealed. Deep behind the razor-wire fences and the shadowed walls of Northern California lies a place that few outside its gates truly understand. Pelican Bay State Prison, a name that echoes through criminal underworlds and whispered legends alike. It's a fortress, a city within a city, designed to contain the most dangerous, the most infamous, and the most elusive inmates in America. But behind the headlines and crime statistics, there's a story that rarely makes it to the public eye. A story of individuals whose lives, choices, and fates are intertwined in ways that will shock, intrigue, and challenge everything you think you know about crime and punishment. Today, we pull back the curtain and ask the question everyone wonders: who's really inside Pelican Bay? Pelican Bay is not just a prison. It's a labyrinth of isolation units, surveillance towers, and underground hierarchies, all designed to control men who society labels irredeemable. Housing thousands of inmates, it's notorious for its security housing unit, where the most dangerous are held in solitary confinement for 22 to 24 hours a day. Imagine living in a 7 by 12-foot cell, stripped of most human contact, hearing only the echo of your own footsteps and the distant hum of fluorescent lights. For decades, this facility has been a final stop for some of America's most infamous criminals. Yet it's not just violent offenders who find themselves here. Many are caught in webs of betrayal, misjudged by a system that sees them only as numbers, not people. But what makes Pelican Bay truly remarkable isn't just the harshness of its walls or the intensity of its security. It's the complex social ecosystem inside. Gangs dominate every corner, alliances form and shatter like glass, and reputations can rise or fall with a single word. In here, power is a currency and survival is the law. Over the years, names like George Jackson and Hugo Pinnell have become more than history. They become legend. But in today's Pelican Bay, a new generation of inmates writes its own chapters in whispered stories and coded signals passed along the tiers. Some are accused of high-profile crimes that shook the nation. Others are ordinary men whose lives took extraordinary turns. Yet they all share the same reality. Inside these walls, notoriety is a shield, and every interaction carries consequences that extend far beyond the cell block. And then there are the myths, rumors of secret deals, hidden networks, and inmates who wield influence outside the prison gates. Stories circulate of men who command loyalty, not with weapons, but with intellect, persuasion, and the fear that respect brings. For outsiders, these tales are almost unbelievable. But for those inside, they are everyday truths, the invisible rules that govern survival in one of America's most feared prisons. To understand the world of Pelican Bay, you have to step into the shoes of those living in the security housing unit. Picture a day that begins with silence, the kind that presses against your ears and settles into your mind. Breakfast is delivered through a small slot in the door. There's no communal dining, no conversations. Just the echo of metal doors and the occasional guard walking the tiers. Hours stretch endlessly, marked only by a single hour of recreation in a small, caged yard. Isolation isn't just physical, it's psychological. Men here are tested by boredom, by their own thoughts, and by the constant awareness that one misstep could change their life forever. And yet, even in the bleakest circumstances, bonds form, quietly, invisibly. Messages are passed through books, coded notes, and fleeting gestures that can mean the difference between safety and danger. The isolation shapes who these men are, but it doesn't erase their capacity to influence the prison's hidden power structures. When most people hear the words Pelican Bay, they picture dangerous, unrepentant criminals. But the truth is far more complex. Inside these walls are faces that tell stories no headline can ever capture. Men whose paths to this place were shaped by circumstance, choices, and sometimes sheer misfortune. Not every inmate is famous for a single act of violence. Some are infamous for surviving decades in a world where survival demands both cunning and patience. Take the man in Cell 42B. He arrived at Pelican Bay as a young adult, hardened by a life on the streets. Yet what made him survive the harshest years wasn't brute strength. It was intelligence. He learned to navigate the invisible hierarchies, to read threats before they became real, and to use words where others relied on fists. Over time, his name became a whisper of power in the wings of the prison. feared, respected, but never fully understood by outsiders. Then there's the story of another inmate, known to fellow prisoners as a strategist. He spends hours poring over books and writing notes, yet few realize that his influence extends far beyond his cell. Guards, gang leaders, and even inmates who have spent decades behind bars speak of him cautiously. Not because he's violent. In fact, most of the time he isn't, but because he understands the rules of Pelican Bay better than almost anyone. Influence here isn't always about muscle. It's about perception, timing, and the ability to move unseen. But notoriety has a price. For every man who gains respect, there is always another waiting to challenge it. Allegiances shift in silence. Rivalries simmer under the surface. And even a single slip of the tongue can ignite consequences that ripple through the prison. Inside Pelican Bay, every interaction carries weight. A misread gesture could be a mistake that's remembered for years. A calculated move could elevate an inmate to untouchable status. And then there are the legends who never appear in media reports. Inmates who have spent decades in solitary, yet whose presence is felt everywhere. They are the ghosts of the facility. Men whose decisions affect the hierarchy, whose whispers shape strategy, and whose very existence serves as a reminder that power in Pelican Bay is as much about intellect as is about intimidation. For outsiders, they're invisible. For those inside, they're everything. Pelican Bay is a place where every face has a story. Every story has a consequence, and every consequence can ripple outward in ways the public will never see. And while we can talk about infamous crimes, high-profile arrests, and gang activity, the true story of this prison lies in understanding these human dynamics. The complex, hidden world that turns survival into an art form and notoriety into a tool far more dangerous than any weapon. To truly understand Pelican Bay, you have to look beyond the fences, beyond the cells, beyond the guards' watchful eyes. The real power isn't always visible. It moves quietly, in whispers, in coded gestures, and in invisible threads that connect inmates across blocks and tiers. Inside this prison, networks form that are as intricate and strategic as any corporate hierarchy or government organization. These networks are not just about gangs or territorial control. They are systems of survival, communication, and influence. Messages pass in ways that outsiders would never recognize. Through books, through carefully chosen words and letters, even through patterns in the way someone arranges their cell or walks down the tier. Every gesture has meaning. Every silence can carry a warning. And in a place where trust is scarce, understanding these invisible networks can mean the difference between life and death. There are inmates who act as connectors, bridging groups, passing information, or quietly mediating conflicts before they explode. Some operate entirely in the shadows, yet their decisions affect entire tiers of the prison. A subtle nod in the yard, a seemingly innocent comment in the library. Even the sharing of supplies can send ripples across this hidden ecosystem. These men wield influence not with violence, but with strategy, foresight, and almost imperceptible understanding of human nature. And then there are the alliances that outsiders never hear about. Unlike the publicized gang rivalries, these alliances are pragmatic, fluid, and often fragile. Two men who appear to be enemies might secretly coordinate to maintain stability or protect themselves from a more immediate threat. A single act of cooperation can save years of tension or prevent a violent confrontation. In this world, betrayal is always a possibility, and even the most careful inmate must constantly read the room, assess loyalties, and anticipate hidden agendas. Yet, for all the strategy, the networks are also a source of identity. Inmates who might feel erased by isolation or the harsh routines of security housing unit still find ways to leave their mark, to assert themselves, and to influence the flow of prison life. Names are remembered. Respect is earned in stories, often unrecorded by the media, are whispered from one generation of prisoners to the next. This is a hidden history of Pelican Bay, written not in newspapers, but in the subtle, silent power plays of those who live behind its walls. Even outside the prison walls, these networks have consequences. Decisions made in a 7 by 12-foot cell can affect neighborhoods, families, and rival organizations across California. For outsiders, the prison is simply a containment facility. For those inside, it is a chessboard where each move carries weight, each alliance can shift the balance of power, and each choice can echo far beyond the barbed wire fences. The most remarkable part? Many of these inmates operate in complete obscurity. To the public, they are just names on a roster or faces in a lineup. But within Pelican Bay, they are architects of influence, strategists of survival, and silent kings of a world few dare to enter. And understanding these hidden networks is the only way to truly grasp the story of who's really inside Pelican Bay. Behind every infamous name, behind every whispered legend inside Pelican Bay, there's a person, a life shaped by choices, circumstances, and moments that few outside could ever imagine. The prison may be designed to strip away identity, but inside these walls, fragments of humanity persist quietly, stubbornly, and sometimes in the most unexpected ways. Many inmates carry regrets. Some look back on decisions made in their youth, on a single choice that set a chain of events into motion. Others reflect on moments of betrayal or missed opportunities, or the families they left behind. And yet, even within the harsh routines of the security housing unit, small acts of humanity surface, acts that are often invisible to outsiders but resonate deeply inside. A shared word of comfort, a book passed along to help someone learn, or simply a gesture of respect can transform the day for a man whose world is otherwise confined to four walls. There are those who mentor others quietly, teaching younger inmates lessons they learned the hard way, not through punishment or intimidation, but through guidance, conversation, and example. These moments, rare as they may be, form a counter-narrative to the chaos often associated with Pelican Bay. They reveal the resilience of the human spirit, even in a place built to erase it. Some inmates use creativity as a lifeline. They write, they draw, they craft small objects with the limited resources available. These acts are not just hobbies. They are statements of existence, proof that a life cannot be reduced to a number or a crime. And in these moments, even the toughest, most notorious figures reveal a side rarely acknowledged: vulnerability, introspection, and a desire to be seen as more than their worst act. Yet the human side of Pelican Bay is not always visible. Even to those inside, trust is scarce, and vulnerability can be dangerous. Inmates learn to balance empathy with caution, to show care without appearing weak, and to forge connections carefully. Every smile, every conversation, every alliance is measured, intentional, and carries weight. And even in the shadows of solitude, many find ways to hold on to hope: a letter from a loved one, a memory of home, a dream of life beyond the fences. For the public, Pelican Bay may be a symbol of punishment. For the men inside, it is a complex world of survival, strategy, and humanity coexisting with notoriety. Understanding the human side of these inmates is essential to understanding the full story. It's not just about crime, violence, or legends. It's about the lives lived, the choices made, and the spirit that persists even in confinement. And sometimes, it's in these moments of humanity that the most remarkable stories emerge. Stories that reveal that notoriety and empathy can coexist, that influence and compassion can intersect, and that even behind the walls of one of America's most feared prisons, the human spirit refuses to be erased. Pelican Bay is not just a prison. It is a world governed by its own laws, its own hierarchies, and its own currency of power. Every day, every interaction, every choice carries weight. Survival here isn't just about physical strength. It's about understanding the subtle politics that dictate the rhythm of life behind bars. Inside these walls, influence is both visible and invisible. Some men wield it openly, commanding respect through reputation, strategic alliances, or sheer force of personality. Others exercise power quietly, manipulating events from the shadows, guiding conflicts before they erupt, and maintaining control without ever being noticed by outsiders. In this environment, a single misstep, an insult, a misplaced word, a broken alliance, can have consequences that reverberate for years. Inmates quickly learn that survival requires understanding the balance of authority. Guards are the most obvious form of power, but navigating that dynamic is rarely simple. Some inmates find ways to earn privileges, negotiate daily routines, or maintain stability in their cell blocks without breaking rules. Others manipulate the gaps in authority, using insight and observation to influence outcomes without overt confrontation. Every interaction becomes a strategic move, every observation a lesson in timing and patience. And then there is the intricate internal politics among inmates themselves. Power is fluid, alliances shift, and loyalty is constantly tested. A man who holds influence today may find it evaporating tomorrow, replaced by someone more cunning, more patient, or simply better at reading the room. Every conversation, every gesture, and every act of compliance or defiance carries meaning, whether it is intended or not. Yet survival in Pelican Bay is about more than just strategy. It is also about adaptability, resilience, and understanding human nature. Some inmates thrive because they can anticipate the moves of others, read hidden agendas, and act with precision. Others endure by blending into background, avoiding conflict, and carefully choosing when to assert themselves. In a place where even a single glance can communicate loyalty or betrayal, these skills are essential. But power in Pelican Bay is never static. Even the most dominant figures face challenges. Shifts in alliances, new arrivals who disrupt the balance, and unexpected interventions by guards or administrators. In this ever-changing landscape, survival is both an art and a science, requiring intellect, patience, and an acute understanding of the rules, spoken and unspoken, that govern this extraordinary prison world. And yet, amidst this constant negotiation of power, the human stories persist. Men who understand the politics of Pelican Bay often do so not for personal gain alone, but as a means to protect themselves, their allies, and sometimes even those who cannot defend themselves. In these calculated moves, there is both danger and ingenuity, cruelty and compassion, a testament to the complexity of life inside one of America's most feared prisons. Pelican Bay is more than steel bars and concrete. It is a stage where every act carries weight, every alliance has meaning, and every decision is a calculation. And in this delicate balance of power, politics, and survival, the most notorious inmates are often the most fascinating, not just for their crimes, but for the strategies they employ, the human insight they wield, and the silent influence they exert on a world few will ever truly understand. Behind the steel doors of Pelican Bay, there are stories the world will never hear. Secrets buried in whispers, hidden in shadows, and locked away behind concrete walls. Every tier has its own history. Every cell holds a memory, and every inmate carries knowledge that could shock those on the outside. Some of these secrets are small, a private code, a hidden alliance, a subtle act that changed the balance of power. Others are monumental, rumors of betrayals, long-forgotten plots, and lives intersecting in ways the public could never imagine. These are the truths that shape Pelican Bay, that define the prison's invisible hierarchies, and that reveal the humanity, cunning, and survival instincts of the men who live inside. And while the world sees only a fortress of punishment, the reality is far more complex. Behind these walls, reputations are forged, legacies are built, and some of the most notorious inmates are quietly orchestrating influence that stretches far beyond the prison gates. What you're about to see is not just a list of infamous names. It's a journey into the hidden networks, the untold stories, and the lives that have been shaped and sometimes destroyed by this extraordinary prison. These are the stories that never leave the walls, until now.